It's Fernando Ruiz Art. Hi everybody. Today we're going to do something different. We're going to draw a tree. I'm going to draw a happy little tree. So I'm starting out by just drawing my tree trunk. And my tree trunk can be this sort of free shape. You don't have to be too precise about it. Whatever you want your tree to be doing, however you want it to be shaped. Now, my tree trunk, a couple of things I'm going to remember about it is this cylindrical shape, okay? It's this cylindrical shape, and I want to retain this cylinder, this three-dimensional cylinder, as I detail my tree. Now, something I'm going to need to keep in mind about my tree is the light source. And very importantly, I need to know where's my light source and what is my light source. So let's say my light source is way up here. And I'm going to go as far as I can. I'm going to say way up here. My light source is the sun in the sky shining down on my tree. My happy little tree. My happy little light source. Okay, so light is coming from this side. Okay, everyone see that? Light's coming from this side, shining down on the tree on this side. That means this side of my tree is going to be in shadow. And I'm throwing down this core shadow. It's what we call a core shadow, which is it's going to be the darkest part of the tree. It's going to be the part of the tree least affected by light. So that's coming down this side, and maybe even on the branches a little bit. And on this branch, certainly, because this branch is even further away. It may even be affected by the trunk of the tree itself. Now remember, I mentioned the tree is essentially a cylinder. So what's going to happen is this shadow is going to curve around this cylinder. And as it does, this shadow is going to break up. It's going to start to break up into rough, smaller strokes. And I want the tree trunk, to feel like tree bark. So that's why I'm using this rough, choppy kind of a stroke. This side of the tree root, dark, dark, dark. As I come up to the light, break it up. This side of the root too, dark, dark, dark. And then break it up as I get into the light. Maybe this side will be even darker. Notice I'm leaving a little of what we call, it's called rim lighting, but it's also really reflected light. And this is what will make my tree look even more three-dimensional. Now, very important, if I haven't mentioned it, I don't want to kill all of my highlights. That means I don't want to fill up my tree shape entirely. I want to leave areas of white peeking through, because that will show that my tree is more three-dimensional, and that light is really having an effect on it. Okay, so that's my tree trunk. Now I want to give my tree some leaves, okay? So first thing I'm going to do is just very loosely, you don't have to be super precise, super neat about it. Very loosely, I'm going to outline just a shape to my leaves, okay? My big body of leaves. Now keep in mind, this body of leaves, it's not a solid concrete thing. It's a mass made up of tiny little leaves. And keeping in mind again where that light source is, okay, remember my happy little light source. So light, again, coming from above, coming from my upper left. So that means the lower side of this is going to be dark. This is all going to be dark. And it may even be casting a little bit of a shadow on the tree trunk and the branches as well. This is all going to be dark, dark, dark. And as I move up to the more lit areas of my leaves, this dark shape is going to break up. Okay? It's going to break up, And it's going to break up into this kind of curly Q little line stroke that I'm using. So what I'm really doing right now is kind of suggesting to the eye that this mass that I'm rendering, this mass is really a cluster of tiny little leaves, millions, thousands, I guess, of tiny little leaves. Here and there, I'm going to break away from the shape, that initial shape that I drew, and I'm going to add some random rogue leaves here and there. And even within the mass of the tree, again, it's not a solid mass. There might be pockets that we could see through. And maybe we see a couple of branches peeking through. Maybe over here, there's another one of these little pockets. And we see some more branches. And here and there, we see more of that. Some more leaves, more shadow going into that pocket. Okay, can we see that? Yeah. And we're getting leaves. Again, I'm moving really fast, so I don't take you guys through too many of these leaves, you know, but I'm hoping the main point comes across, that a variety of different strokes can really go a long way to tricking your viewer's eye, which is really what I'm doing, okay? To my viewer's eye, this might look like a tree, a happy tree, but really, it's a jumble of scribbles that I'm using strategically to make my viewer think that they're seeing a tree. Now, maybe my tree here is sitting in a field of grass. Let's give it a little field, maybe a little hill. And maybe we see some blades of grass over here. Okay, can we see the grass? And maybe my tree, remember my light is coming from this direction, so maybe my tree is casting a shadow on this field. And this shadow, as it gets lighter, is going to break up into this grassy texture. And for this grassy texture, I'm just whipping my pencil. I'm just whipping it into these grassy little strokes, indicating blades of grass here and there. Maybe some little... Notice I go a little longer as I get closer to us. As I get further away, my grass is going to become smaller strokes, tiny little wisps of lines in the distance, just fuzzy little lines. And again, I don't want to fill up my whole field with these little lines because I want it to seem like the sun is shining down on this field. So it's going to have some light areas too. And maybe in the distance, we'll have some shrubs, some bushes in the distance. And notice I'm just scribbling these bushes in. These bushes aren't very fancy. I'm just scribbling away, making happy little bushes. A tribute to one of the most influential artists of our time, the legendary Mr. Robert Ross. What was his name? Bob Ross, that was it. Mr. Robert Ross. And beyond the bushes, maybe we'll have some evergreens. Okay? Some pine trees out there in the distance. And notice now, hopefully one of the things that's coming across is I'm using my pencil in many different ways. I'm not using my pencil always in the same way, making the same stroke. You know, now I'm using these hard, jagged, rough strokes that's different from the scribbly strokes that I use for the shrubs. It's different from the whipped strokes that I use for the grass. And that's why we're able to see all of these different textures. And that's what this is about. It's about texture. Sometimes when we think of drawing with pencil, especially at the beginning, we kind of limit ourselves and think about drawing linearly, only linearly. Now beyond my my evergreens, maybe there's some mountains. And I'm using a very thin, light line for my mountains so that my mountains feel like they're far away. So I recommend in my basic drawing class, I always tell my students, experiment with your tools, experiment with your pencils. You know, I'm just using a plain old, you know, Papermate Sharpwriter, one of these disposable mechanical pencils. This is nothing fancy. Okay, some more shrubs on this side. Maybe some more evergreens. Now, beyond my mountains, maybe I've got some clouds, okay? And maybe I'm going to shade the underside of the clouds because they don't catch the light. It's the underside. So they might be a little gray. And I'm using more of the side of the point of my pencil. So once again, I recommend, you know, really play with your pencils, your tools, and see how many different types of marks you can make with your tools. I'm going to throw a tone down for my sky. Sometimes we don't think about rendering our sky. We treat our sky as though it's just negative space, just this sort of leftover space beyond the shapes that we're drawing. But sky is a texture too. And maybe I want to darken my sky a little bit. Maybe I want to go in with my eraser and indicate some more clouds in my sky. Your eraser is a legitimate drawing tool, so never feel like it's not. So, like I said, really explore what your pencils can do. They're really capable of much more than you think they are. They're not just about drawing lines. Just spreading the shadows a little bit more through my leaves here just to make my leaves seem a little fuller. So experiment, play. Notice all these different textures that I just kind of whipped out, and we're kind of like 12 minutes into this. You know, the reason we see these different textures is because I use different types of marks, different strokes, different forms of rendering to indicate all of these textures. The tree bark, the grass, the leaves, the evergreens, the mountains, all of that. All of it is rendered a different way. And if you take a close look at it, it's all scribbles. But when you step away, it looks like, hopefully, a nice tree. Let's take a closer look. Okay, there's my tree from the roots on up into the leaves. Okay, so that's my lesson on trees, everybody. I hope you dug it. I hope this one will grow on you, get it, and won't leave you disappointed. Okay, I'll stop now. Thanks for joining me today. If you enjoyed this, please click like. Please subscribe if you haven't. Please feel free to share. And I will see you in the next video. Keep drawing, everybody. Keep drawing. Bye-bye now.